Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining another great session of our uLaw webinar. We're extremely happy to present this. This is our 8th in the series, and we're extremely happy to have returning members and new members who are coming in to see. Just a few housekeeping items. Again, because this is a webinar accredited by the LSUC, we would like you to change your name so that we kind of have an idea who attended the webinar. You can also send us an email at the end after 4:30 indicating that you attended the webinar. We would need that for ledgering purposes so that we can send a trail to LSUC. We want to thank everybody for taking a time on Friday to sit with us. I have here both myself and Praveen who will be conducting the webinar together. It's about 90 minutes, and we'll go through what is practice management. So this webinar is all about, what is practice management, how can it be done in a very efficient way, what are some of the key elements that Law Society is talking about. Now, this full webinar has been derived from the LSUC guidelines. They have a lot of guidelines in terms of how you should manage your business, what you should do in terms of taking full control of your business. And we will go through every of these items one by one and showcase you using our software as a tool. Obviously, we are not here in this webinar to promote our software in full. Like, we are basically going to talk about all these professional obligations. We will use our software as a tool, and Praveen will talk a little bit about the use cases and how having a software in general will help you make your business better. So in terms of that, we will go through the obligations one by one. There are basically client intake and service and communication is one of the biggest obligations we have because when a client comes, you need to handle the client, service him properly, make sure that you are basically communicating properly so that there's no miscommunication. That's one of the first guidelines that they actually talk about. We'll get into a little bit of depth about file management. What is it about file management? Why is it important? Because what kind of accountability does file management actually bring to your practice? We'll talk about that in general. Then we'll talk about financial management, which is very key because, unlike other professions, this profession, we allow to handle trust, and trust is something that we need to be extremely careful about. So we'll talk about financial management. We'll also talk about business management because there are two aspects to practice management in terms of accounting. One is basically handling, clients' funds, like, trust funds coming in, general funds, disbursements and all that stuff. But overall, at the end of the day, you're running a business. So business management is pretty important too. We'll also touch upon a few other things like professional management that can bring a lot of value add, especially in Ontario with so many, associations, and there are several of them with whom even we have partnered and benefited from, like, for example, CCLA out of Eastern Ontario, or a TLA out of Toronto, FDR, out of Toronto, or even organizations like OPA. We have benefited a lot, and so will you guys. So we will touch upon a little bit upon professional management. Then we'll talk about time management, why it is very key. And at the end of the day, we are all doing this for personal management. So the Law Society has some guidelines on if you do these things, how efficiently you can manage your personal stuff as well. So let me go through each of these criteria in greater detail. We will use the software applicably wherever it makes sense to kind of elicit a point a little better. Again, we are not using our software to promote our software. We're just using it as a means to showcase how this has to be done and how efficiently it can be done. Okay. So moving on, let's talk about the first one, client intake. Now, there are several elements, that go in a client intake. The first and foremost thing that you need to be very cautious about is how you record, calls and consultations with the client. Okay. The reason why that is very important is because communication has to be extremely clear between you and the client. You got to have a mechanism by which you can dock it properly. You can dictate the time when that incident actually happened. And you need to separate the concept of actually having two things. One is when you actually did the work and what you did, how much time you spent on it, and also have a concept of how much are you planning to bill on it. Now, it's a very important, even if you're using Excel to actually record this, we strongly recommend that you basically record the event, the description, the time when it happened, the full date, basically, like, the date when it happened, the day when it happened, and the amount of time that you actually spent on it when it happened, and then capture billable time a little bit separately. Like, for example, I'm just going to use the software example here. So if you look at our software, like if let's say there was a communication that was made and you clicked on a new event and you said telephone conversation, let's say it happened at 3:06 and you spend, say, 12 minutes on it, right? And if you actually plan, in the description you would say what you talked, right? And in the billable time, you can actually say how much you want to charge. So for example, you can say, I talked for 12 minutes, but for this client, I only want to charge him for 6 minutes. So it's very important that as part of detailed recording of calls, you record the event, the description, the time when it happened, amount of time you spent, and then the billable has to be recorded separately. So even if I was doing this in Excel without our software, we strongly recommend these things are actually there. Next thing that I would like to talk about is conflict checking for confidential information. I mean, this conflict check is basically to protect you. Like, you want to ensure that this client is someone whom you can represent. Like, we've heard several of our clients give us very beautiful conflict check stories, like where, they failed to do a conflict check and it come to bite them, or sometimes they basically didn't even retain a client because they understood a conflict that happened several years ago, and it kind of helps them do that. I mean, it's a very important integral business process that you need to bring into as part of your client intake. Most softwares can do that. Now, conflict checks have relational checking, name matching, address matching, and most softwares do that, including ours, which does it. And sometimes some softwares even go a step further. Like, for example, some people may come up with, you are in a hurry to actually intake a client. You might have a spelling mistake, right? You might have, let's say the client's name is Joseph Fernandez, and, instead of, some people spell with a Z, some people spell with an S. So you want the software to take into account these things. So if you normally use, say, your Windows machine or your Mac to actually do a search, it's going to be an exact search. But when you do using these professional software for conflict check, they go a lot beyond that. So conflict check is not just about, like, searching in your files to see, have you ever seen Joseph Fernandez? It's all about how you represented him. Was he an additional party somewhere? Was he a defendant? Was he at an opponent party at some point of time? Did you ever put a docket for someone else where you said, hey, I talked to this person? So you got to be a little bit more prudent about conflict check. And that's the recommendation that the Law Society gives you. And there are a lot of tools that help with it, and we do that as well. The next step is determining the collateral for the fee. Like, it's pretty important that you establish certain parameters when you actually talk to the client. One of the key things that we have seen our clients do, and it's also established very clearly in the obligation guidelines, is establishing a fee structure. Basically, letting them know that your hourly rate is this much. If you're going to plan to use assistants, making it very clear who are all the assistants, who are all the other lawyers or paralegals whom you're planning to use in this matter, what is their rate. Clarifying them very clearly at the start of the matter helps make things much easier. Now, let's look at a simple example how a software can actually help you with that. Let's say in our software you created a new matter. So let's use that classic example we talked about. New client. We said Joseph Fernandez, and we basically have to take all the information from him. Let's say 66 King Street. Let's say he's from Ottawa, Ontario. That's his home address, Canada. And let's say his phone number is that, and we hit the save button. I'm going to show you quickly a way by which you can actually do conflict check. So you can just say document generation, go into the action button and you can say conflict screening and just do a quick conflict screening. Now, it's nice to have a report where you've documented. Look at that. It immediately found Joe Sutherland, Joseph, Joe Sutherland. Names are very similar, even nicknames. These are not things that your standard Windows search will catch, right? So it's pretty important that you use a good conflict search algorithm. And then you create a matter. And when you create a matter, we want you to establish a few fee rates. For example, you want to say, hey, this matter, I'm decided to go with $175. My assistant will go with, $100. Let's say this is a family matter. You can set your area of practice, hit the save button. So it's very important that you establish that. Now, if you're planning to use more people in the matter, you can go here and you can say who are, like, for example, Karen is your other lawyer or paralegal whom you're bringing, and her rate is $150. You can establish that and hit the save button. So establishing a clear matrix of who are all going to be participating in this matter and what are their rates is what the guidelines that the Law Society is actually asking you to follow. So that's why determining the fee structure is very important, and it has to be done pretty early in the game. The next one is handling trust funds, depositing the retainer into trust accounts, and providing an appropriate receipt. It's very important that you do this. Now, why is this very important? One, trust funds can come in several ways. It can come in form of cash. It can come in form of checks, money order. There are certain things that in which it can come. Sometimes, if you have a good payment methodology, you can even collect it using credit card. But you need to give very strict guidelines to your payment company that they don't charge you the fees from your trust account. It's pretty important that you kind of take care of all these things. So depositing the retainer into trust account at a proper time, providing the receipt is very important. And if it's a cash, you have to deposit it within 48 hours of you receiving the funds, and make sure that you have to actually provide a receipt that clearly says that you're not accepting cash beyond $7,500 because there are guidelines on how much cash you can actually accept as part of retainer. Okay. Now, when you accept retainer, you got to maintain, a record of that. Now, what are some of the standard entities that you need to capture? One is the date and time when the retainer was actually received. Second was a lot of payment, a memo information, like, for example, check number. If it was done as an email transfer, what is the reference? You need to capture that. You also need to capture who it was from. Very important, because there are several times when things are basically done at an earlier date, and then you need to capture all that information. Sometimes what happens is you're actually working with one party because they are your client, but someone else is actually paying for it, and you need to capture that information. So let me show you an example of how you can get a retainer. So in our case, you will just click on the new retainer button. You can enter the amount. Let's say it is $1,800, right? Now you go ahead and indicate what method. I'm going to go with check. I mean, you can do payment collection if you are with that proper, payment collection company. Again, make sure that the commissions don't come out of, the trust account. Make sure you enter the check number, and this is where you would enter the receipt from. So in this case, let's say, Joseph's dad, Dan Fernandez paid for it. You can enter that receipt from information, right? Click on the receipt, apply, and record. Now, make sure that you also communicate to your client in the language of his preference. Like, some softwares do support both English and French, right? And if you can do that, like, things are even more clear. So when you do receipts, a very important aspect that you need to remember is you need to make sure that you have a duplicate. So in this case, what we have done here is this is a receipt. The note is right here where we say, like, that you're not allowed to accept cash beyond that. Like, that's a very standard note. You can, it's pretty good to actually, put your logo on banner. It's like advertising your company. It kind of gives you an opportunity to kind of, if he's going to be a referral client, the receipt can actually act on your behalf to him to actually spread your business. So it's a good idea to actually have a banner and your logo on the receipt because you want to communicate your brand as well. You can put your amount and you can indicate how it was paid. Very important note is you need the signature of him and yourself. Now, this is optional in all methods of payment other than cash. In cash, it's mandatory, but it's a good principle to even do it in non-cash situations to get his signature and your signature so that there's like an agreement here. Now, always good to have a duplicate so that you can file this for your audit purpose. So I see there was a question asked about determining collateral fees, about flat fees. Very important that if you're establishing a flat fee structure, you kind of record that as well. Softwares allow you can put fee caps. Like, for example, you've determined that the total amount of fee you're going to charge in this matter is $5,000. You can operate on a fee cap and then continue your invoice structure. That's a great thing to do. Moving on to more communication, providing letters of engagement and non-engagement is very important. Okay, let's now talk about some classic examples of engagement and non-engagement communication. Everything that we talked about here, fee structure and the acceptance of the receipt, should be all in a retainer letter. Now, retainer letter is very personal to your business. You got to have a nice template where you capture, the services that you're going to be providing, the fee structure, who are you going to use. Some softwares offer several templates, of retainer letters. Choose a template that's appropriate for your business and your area of practice. Because sometimes, it's good to have a generic one. A generic one should cover most aspects of your business. But if you have something very specific for a particular matter, like, for example, that this is like a bills matter and you have a special retainer for bills, use that. It'll kind of improve your the confidence of the client over you, and you can do that. Now, why is non-engagement letter very important? It's very important because you don't want this client to come back to you and say, hey, we never disengaged and you didn't represent me, and it can really hurt your professional outlook. And that's why, non-engaging is very important. We've had several client communications with our clients who have said, hey, even non-engagement letters have to be crafted these days very carefully because, this is the day and age of internet. If you craft a non-engagement letter that is too rude, these clients can be really stupid and post it on the internet. Or, so it takes some time, do some research. There are beautiful samples of non-engagement letter present in LSUC guidelines. Also in British Columbia, Law Society also produces some very classic non-engagement letter. We have got our inspiration straight out of the two guidelines. We've picked it out straight from there, and we provided it to you as a template. So, if you have to engage in our software, all you need to do is just click on document generation, just say non-engagement letter, download, and it's an editable PDF. We basically fill in most of the details, and you just fill in whatever you want. This is in regards to how the Law Society has indicated a template, but you're free to even change it, basically, because the document is an editable document, so you can do that. So getting back, just to kind of do a quick recap of this slide, detailed recording of calls and consultations is very important. Then conflict check. Make sure that you use more than just your search as a mechanism to actually do conflict check, because a lot of information exists behind the scenes on conflict. Determining fee structure is very important. Hourly, flat rate, contingency. Make sure you do your proper research and then you record that. Handling trust funds very initially, right into the first engagement, is very important. And last and final, like provide a proper engagement, non-engagement letters, and all other client communications. So that brings us to an end of the first obligation. We're now going to move to this. This is just like we put a slide to just summarize all your engagements in a single way. Like for example, obviously, like the nature and scope of the matter needs to be explained to your client. The client responsibilities have to be explained. It's a good idea to kind of focus a little bit on scheduling and the course of representation. You want to tell him like, hey, this matter has this is the whole course, because most people who come to you come with a very, very little idea about what is going to even happen to them, as part of the representation. The method and the frequency of communication should be established. Like, if you are a very organized person and you send a communication every month, let them know. Retainer arrangements, termination details should be there, very clearly documented in the retainer letter. The confidentiality is very important. That's why they're approaching you. Also, clearly communicating to them the risk associated, with certain methods. Like, for example, let's say you use Gmail. You may want to very clearly say, and I use Gmail, and there is a risk associated with using Gmail, right? Like, there's nothing wrong in using Gmail, but clearly stating the risk associated with them and clarifying to them is something that the Law Society is recommending. Let's now talk about the next obligation, which is file management. Now, many people believe like, there's a fundamental question: why should even file management, be such a big, professional obligation by itself? Now, the reason why it is so important is because if you can associate everything with a particular file, sometimes you even stop representing that by the name of the client. You actually go with the file. I've seen several of our clients who actually talk by file numbers more than the client themselves. Now, when you organize things under a single umbrella of file management, search, chronological ordering, maintaining, records of what is happening at what time, looking at it from all angles will really give you more view. So the first and foremost thing is you need to have a file checklist, of all incoming matters. You need to know what are all your active matters, what are all your closed matters, what are your archived matters. You need to know that. Now, many softwares help you classify that. Like, our software allows you to basically mark a matter as active or closed or archived. So if you just click on the Mark As button, we will basically allow you to make it as active, closed, or archived. Okay. Similarly, if you go to our quick view, we basically organize the matters in that way. Like, these are your active matters, right? If you click here, you can say, I want to just see my archived matters, and they'll just show you your archived matters. So softwares that do that make your life easy. The file number is here. When it was created is here. The error, the title is here. The client is here. Descriptions can be there. Now, descriptions are, you can have more information about carrying about the matter if you want to do that. Sometimes it's a good idea to have even quote file numbers here, the status, and when it was last modified. Very key information, because it kind of tells you how you handled this matter and what you did with this matter. What was the last time you even looked at it, right? Very important information. The next one is the confirmation that a conflict check was actually performed. There was a question that was asked, what is the difference between closed and archived? The reason why we give two classifications, closed and archived, is basically because a matter could be closed, it could be a very recent matter. Like, for example, you can have a status where any matter that was closed in the last 6 months is closed. But beyond 6 months, you want to have a lesser view of it, so you can move it from closed to archived. The more classifications you have of your matter status, the more perspective you get. And that's what this file management is all about. Like, to get a perspective on what is your active, what are the ones that you've recently closed. Okay, closed is more like recently closed, and archived is like more like closed for a long time. Okay. Getting back, confirmation of a conflict check completion is very important. And the reason why this is important is because you really want to make sure that when you're audited or if there's a question in the future, that you're actually accountable for the fact that you did the conflict check procedure. So we already showed you how to do conflict check, but what some softwares do like ours is they bring out a conflict check confirmation by doing a form. What we do in that form is we walk you through the guidelines that Law Society has actually laid out on how you have to do conflict check. For example, when you do a conflict check, you have to know whether it was a new client or a new matter for an existing client. So you can basically check one of the check boxes in the document we generate and keep a record of that. Conflict search information, what was done. You can just say, all the information that you did. You can say, I used my software, I used my Windows search tool, I did a quick, analysis of my previous additional parties. You can say whatever you did and what was performed can all be recorded. Very important to have the information, who did it, was it done by you or your assistant? Now let's say that there was a conflict and you determined that you do want to represent. What was the steps taken? When was the date that was completed? You can indicate whether there was a conflict, confirmed, or it's a potential conflict, but you're not sure. You can say that, or if there's no conflict, you can indicate that. You can even say, what did you do to the retainer? You said hey, I did not decline the retainer, right? Did you refer the conflict to a committee? You can say no or yes. So by this, what you've done is you've recorded all the actions that you actually took as part of a conflict screening. And that's what they're laying it out in the guidelines. They're saying confirmation of conflict check completion is very important. So if you would fill out a document very similar to that, you don't have to use ours, but a template like that, have that, you are pretty much protected during your audit time. Okay? Separate files for each respective matter. Now, several times it so happens that a client will come back to you for another matter. As part of the file management, it's very important that you create completely separate file numbers for each of that. Most software very intuitively handle that. Like for example, if Joseph came back to you and you clicked on action button and you did a new matter, and let's say this one was some real estate, a house closing or something like that, and you change the area of practice to be, a real estate matter, and you hit the save button. Now, the software clearly tells you, hey, for Joseph, you have two matters. One is the house closing, another is the family matter. It clearly indicates that. And it creates independent file names. Like this one is 838, while the previous one was 198. Now, funds could be exchanged between the matters, right? But you need to track each and every of them completely separated. You need to not only does your business practice needs to be separated, your accounting procedures also need to be separated. Okay, so when you're generating your ledgers, which we'll touch in the future, you need to have completely a separate process for each of them. Chronological and secure organization of electronic files. Now, it's very important that when you store documents for your matter, you also store them chronologically and organize them. That's one of the main reasons why we now bring in a document management feature too. Like for example, in uLaw, if you have your documents with Google Drive, you're a very organized person, you manage everything in Google Drive, we help you do that. And basically, it kind of brings that association of documents for that matter right here. We kind of bring that into this play. Okay, so now obviously there's no documents for this one, but if I would go into my drive, it should basically show me my documents that I actually had. In this case, I just logged in, so but I can bring it later and I can show it to you that I have my Google Drive. The next thing that we wanted to highlight was proper organization and cross-indexing. Okay, so if you have several files, make sure that you numerically order them, cross-index them, and manage them on a very organized way. Okay, we strongly recommend using Dropbox, Box, Google Drive. These are all cloud-based solutions. because they keep your documents anywhere, anytime. You can access them, organize them in a matter format. So you can just create a directory for each matter and then put that associated document in that matter. That's exactly how our solution works with Google, where we create the directory for you, and all you do is just drag and drop your solution into that directory, and it just shows up, here. Similarly, what we wanted to also show you is, tell you is recording of client interaction is very important. Okay, making sure that you kind of record and say what kind of interactions you had is very important. So to summarize, in file management, what we have is making sure that you have a file checklist, confirmation of conflict check, separate files for each and every matter separately, even if it's like a multiple instance, then chronological and secure organization of files, personal recording of client files and interactions, proper organization through numeric indexing. Let's now get into another critical section of professional obligation, and this is financial management. Very important section because the first two have a lot of common sense. This one also has a lot of common sense, but then there need to be added business practices that you need to basically make sure that you have to kind of bring in the fact that your financial management is properly done. Okay. Now, in financial management, we have captured 6 key elements. Okay. The 6 key elements that we are basically having here, and we will talk about each of them, is first one is proper fee scheduling of hourly rate, recording billable time and timesheets, client files, and accounting systems. Very important, whether you use a software or you do it manually, right? Making sure that you record these at the time when it happened is very important. The reason why it's very important to record it at that time is because by natural means we forget things, and then it'll be very hard for us to recoup that and say, oh, this is what happened at that time, and you can have a lot of errors. So recording them when it happens is very important. Then obviously when you do work to get paid, you basically need to promptly generate your invoices, transmit it off to your clients. Now, with so much advanced technology where you can, even share invoices using your document management system, or you can actually send it by an email. The more prompt you are in doing that, the faster is an opportunity for yourself to get paid. Now, obviously, if you have a retainer, this is pretty straightforward and simple. You raise the invoice, you send it to your client, you tell them that, with respect to you, everything looks good. Go to your trust and do a simple transfer, right? So if it's not a retainer-based matter and you still retain the client, obviously now you need to send the invoice so that the client recognizes that he needs to pay. Now, inside the invoice, to make things very simple, we believe that you have to very clearly indicate the activity, the type of billing that you actually did for that activity, sum it up, make sure that the tax information is very clear. Also add a summary page where you're saying what is the total that is due. And in case if you have money in trust that you're actually transferring, you should very clearly indicate what you're going to be doing. And also put a terms and conditions at the end of the invoice so that people kind of understand when they need to pay and what they need to pay. Now, systematic tracking of overpayments on account is also, very important. Like, for example, if somebody basically, you invoice for $700 and they accidentally paid you, more, you need to realize that, hey, that money cannot go into my general account. You need to track it, put it into your trust account, and only transfer the portion that you're actually eligible to transfer. And tracking, when we say tracking about payment, it's not just about date and time. The method of payment, who is the payee, also needs to be captured very, very clearly as part of receiving the payment information. Okay. The next thing that we generally talk, in terms of compliance is the general account side. Let's say you had a disbursement and you had to basically pay for it using your credit card. Sometimes you are in an emergency situation, you actually paid out of pocket. Like capturing that properly so that you tell your client that this is a disbursement that was not withdrawn from trust, it was actually withdrawn from, it was out of general, and he needs to be paying it as part of the invoice is very important. Okay, so recording the disbursement in its real form, how it actually happened, and presenting it to the client in the proper way so that the client understands, the requirements very clearly, makes things very simple and easy and manageable. So the reason why the Law Society has laid out this guideline so clearly is because it's inevitable that, that you will handle disbursements in non-trust mode. You might be in a hurry that day when you actually had to do a court payment, you had only that credit card which was not your business credit card, right? Or it might have been your business credit card. So when things come out of general, if you don't account for it properly, you are subjecting yourself to, an accounting issue that you may not get paid properly, or you might have to have some negotiation on disbursement. So recording that properly in an accounting system kind of gives you a very easy indicator to go back. Maintaining original bank statements, books, canceled checks, because many times, or even NSFs, detailed duplicate deposit slips is very important as well. These are basically your indicators that will help you in your reconciliation process. When you do your reconciliation, most of the stuff that you recorded in time with respect to when it happened will make you reconcile things very fast and quick. What's really going to hurt your reconciliation process and make it really long are these canceled checks, the outstanding checks, and your outstanding deposits. Now, having record of them kind of gives you an indicator. I've seen several clients whom I've helped as part of support. They come and say, I don't even know what is the $300. I know it was cash. I don't have a deposit slip. Now, if he or she had maintained a detailed duplicate deposit slip from the bank, you'd actually know what it was, why it was done, and you can actually make accounting very, very, very simple, right? Same thing with canceled checks. When a check was issued to you and it was canceled, these are two entries in that matter. The date when you entered the check and the date when you actually, canceled the check. And when you do these two things, maintaining check numbers and actually maintaining physical records of the canceled check helps you do that. The other day there was a client with whom we were helping him, with our support process, and he had to handle an NSF. Now, we clearly asked him to put the check number as part of the software. And, he came to us maybe about a month later and said that was so helpful basically because, he was able to track what happened with that matter just by that check number information, right? So it's very important. I mean, these things look trivial and they don't take a lot of time to capture, but if you capture them, they'll obviously have a huge payback when you actually, do things yourself and audit yourself much later, okay? Now, preparation of financial statements, income statement, expense statement, annual budget, these things are basically to give health of your firm. Now, there's a lot more than just managing client accounting, for you. You at the end of the day, you need to pay your assistant. You need to make sure that you are paying rent. You're, making sure your stationery and all your other supplies are there. Now, these are not associated with any client. Now, budgeting for them, making sure that your P&Ls are actually doing well, your ins and your outs are matched, you're not over withdrawing than what you need to have, making sure that you have enough funds to pay your credit card statement. These are very important, and having a financial statement that backs you every time, is the one that actually, will help you plan about your firm and also give you a health of the firm. So with respect to these professional obligations on financial management, we're just going to look at certain things in our software, how we do it, and to give you certain ideas one of the key ones that I want to spend some time on is disbursements, right? So let's go back to the software. I'm going to go back to that exact same matter, the family matter, and I'm going to go to disbursements and retainer, and what I'm going to do is let me do a few disbursements. The first disbursement I'm actually going to do is, let's say we paid from trust. We say new disbursement, paid from trust. We used a trust check for that. Let's say it was a $75 court fee. You can say court fee, and you can say Brampton Courthouse. So what we have captured here is the amount, the check number that we are actually issuing, the reason for it, who are we paying to, and we can also indicate that, that we want to print a check probably because we did say it's a check, and hit the payment. Now when we do that, what will happen is your software needs to maintain all that information. So let me quickly do the check, and then we will go to what the software captures and how it can actually help you. So that's a nice check that you can just run it by a laser printer, and you'll get the check printed, and you can mail it to the Brampton Courthouse. But by recording that, if I go into my accounts, and I'm going to do a quick trust display for Joseph, and I do a show, it clearly tells me the following. $1,800 was the receipt, $75 was withdrawn for the court fee, tells you everything, check number, the reason, that it was a payout, it was a disbursement, right? Who was the client, what is the file, everything is captured here. The balance in trust is also there. So in a single click, we were able to get this financial information for you with respect to what you actually did in the matter. Now let's look at some of the disbursement complexities that I actually talked to you about. Okay, the disbursement complexity that I want to tell you is, how did you actually pay from general? So if you pay from general, there are several things that you need to capture. For example, let's say it's an application fee. You can give a description of what it is, right? And put here an indication how much it is. Let's say it's $60. Now, in application fee, you obviously need to have the HST on top, so 13%. If it's exempted, you can indicate that, right? In the bottom, you tell us how you actually paid for it. Let's say you paid with your RBC credit card, and the transaction number. This is optional, but you can just put a reference number, and you can say you paid to City of Brampton, right? Now, if it was not from your credit card and that date was from your personal pocket, you can actually indicate it as a cash account and say it was from owner's pocket. You can capture it right here. There's a huge advantage of doing that is because when you come back to that, it will tell you how it was actually done, and because you've captured, you exactly know that you need to pay yourself. So let me put this, $60 plus HST. If I would go into my owner's pocket account, which I'm going to go in a minute, owner's pocket account, I should see very quickly a ledger that tells me, what it was all about. So let me go to the owner's pocket account. Here you go. Application fee, a credit entry, $67.80. That means someone else paid for it. It's not the business, and that person needs to be paid off that $67.80 from the business. So capturing this information is very important. Otherwise, you're going to lose track of that one. So again, I want to reiterate the important information that we captured here: item name, the date when it happened, description, amount, add the HST because that is a payable, okay, and then whether it was a cash or a bank, who it was paid to, and owner's pocket. Now, if we actually go to accounts and we actually now show our general ledger, I'm just going to do it for a small period of time just to see how it looks like. There you go. City of Brampton, application fee, paid as cash, $67, $60, and then $7.80 was the HST. You didn't enter any of this information. It was just captured by the fact that you entered it in the matter as a proper disbursement. So coming back to our presentation, so we already talked about the fee structure. You know, we can talk a little bit about invoicing. We can raise invoice and show how to capture some of these details. We talked a lot about disbursements. I want to talk a little. I've been showing you some of the original bank statements and ledgers. Let me quickly show you deposit slips. So if you go to account, and if you have a deposit slip, you can just say deposit slip. Let's say it was, in this case, whatever you received, let's say $780. Who did you receive from? Why did you receive it? And if you do an apply, now what the software can actually do is generate a deposit slip very similar to what the bank would actually sign up for. You can just handwrite some of this stuff, like, if it's a cash transaction, you can just write, how much it is. And the important information is getting the teller stamp, and then, you have the duplicate deposit slip that you actually maintain in your account. Going back, looking at expense statements, and let's also look at invoice. So first, I want to do a quick invoice here. Let's say, we want to charge for the initial client meeting, say 1.2 hours. The key elements that need to be captured in the invoice, I'm going to do a quick pre-bill because it's a great tool to actually prevent financial errors inside your software. So when you actually do a pre-bill, what it does is it basically allows you to kind of capture the errors right there. Like, for example, it shows you, oh, that's a preview, but it tells you, hey, $175 was the amount, for 1.2, it's 210, that's your HST, adds it up, showcases your one disbursement that you had, the application fee, also tells you the retainer and the subtraction that you had because you paid something out of trust directly. And the last and final that I wanted to show is the total. So in this one, we've captured the billable. We've also captured the fact that, that the total disbursements. It tells you the retainer, it tells you the balance in trust. Okay, so let me quickly generate an invoice and see whether all the stuff that the Law Society actually has, how are we capturing that in your invoice? And as I said, the key elements are, the details that are here. The invoice number is here. Your HST number or GST number, based on which province you are, can be put here. Then your information, the client information, the balance information. And the last page, I want to bring it to your attention, is the signature. You can bring in, your term, please pay the invoice. You can just give a standing instruction, and the terms can be here. That you're going to charge an interest. You can have that here. So going back to the original slide, we kind of showcased how, a software can help you with all that stuff. As we said here, specified time. Columns in the invoice are very important. For example, if I go to the first page, it clearly tells you the item, the units cost rate, tells you the time, because these are some of the questions that you can avoid from your client if you have all these information properly captured. Last and final, I already showed you expense statements and your financial statements, to gauge health of your business. For example, in our case, let's say, you had an office expense and let's say you have to pay rent. Let's say expense, office expense. Let's say that was a rent. let's say it was $700 was the rent, and then, that's the HST on top of it, and how you actually paid. Maybe you should check number that and hit the submit. So that's one part of it, which is like when you do that, you can have what the Law Society calls an expense book that you can actually download, and it will showcase you the totals, right? Like, it'll tell you, hey, for that period, these are all your expenses, like, that you had in the corporation. Shows you all the details of that. But taking it to the next step is actually doing an analysis of that. Like, for example, in this one, we clearly see that rent by far in this month was really high, right? Like, I think we put multiple entries, but you clearly see here rent was so high. Expenses on the client was there. There's a lot of miscellaneous expenses, your cable expenses, the software expense that you paid. That's a little high for uLaw, but you don't pay that much. But it kind of captures in total what it is, gives you like an analytical view of it in expense, brings out who are your top clients, right? Like your corporate expenses that much, but your per client expenses are only that much. Now this is a recoverable expense, right? As soon as you raise an invoice, you're going to get this money back. This money you're not going to get back in 2 seconds. They kind of pointed out to you that your corporate expenses are way higher than your money that you're actually going to get back. Look at that. 92% of the expenses, are expenses in office. Only 7% is actually coming back. So that's exactly what, they're actually talking about here, like to gauge the firm's health. Like you kind of know, oh, I need to be a little bit more careful in my next month when I, kind of manage my expenses and make sure that I'm actually doing a good job. So these are some of the financial aspects that that the Law Society really cares about. Let's talk a little bit more in detail about that the financial obligations in terms of ledgers. Now for that, basically the key ones that you need to have are your two ledgers, your trust and your general ledger. Very important that you look at them on a very, very regular basis. Look at your receipts. Like, there are 4 receipts. Like you have your trust receipts and your trust disbursements. And also you have your general receipts and your general disbursement journals. So the 4, you have a visual inspection of them, make sure that everything is recorded properly. And the most important one is how you do your monthly trust comparison and reconciliation. You want to make sure on 25th of the month, you do your reconciliation so that the books that we are maintaining in uLaw matches with what is there in the bank. Yeah, or any software for that matter. Like, we'll use uLaw as a quick tool to explain you that. So in this case, we just did an invoice. I want to do a trust transfer before we actually go ahead and do that. So you just click here, clearly say that. We say, hey, there's a pending transfer, and you can transfer. So there's like a legal fee and a disbursement. Let's say I just transfer just the legal fee. I don't transfer the disbursement for some reason, right? And I hit the transfer button. Now let's talk about all the documents that they ask you to generate. So let's look at trust ledger. So what I like is, because compliance is so important, bringing just that out as a single panel. So this is all the stuff that you need for the Law Society. The 2 ledgers, the 4 journals, and fee book, expense book, and reconciliation. Let's do them one by one. Just do that monthly. And I'm just going to quickly do a show rather than actually, download it. What you will see is it'll go client by client and shows you your income, the ins and the outs, and shows you the balance. Let's quickly look at this matter here. Oh, this is sorted alphabetically. So let's go and look for our Joseph Sutherland, and Joseph Fernandez. There you go. 1,800 in trust, 75 paid out. That was, the other thing that was paid out. So that means the balance in trust in 2 seconds, is 1,487.70. Now going back, let's do the second one, which is general. And this one I'm just going to do for Joe. Let's say we do all transactions just for Joe. And I'm going to do a quick show. Look at that. I only transferred the legal fee. It tells me that I have a balance of $67.80. And that's exactly what the Law Society is looking for. They want to know the fee structure in general, the disbursement structure, and how much have you paid yourself on this account, and what's the balance. So that finishes my second compliance. Now let's look at receipts. You just say trust receipts. I want to do this month. I only do a show again. So this should show you all the money that came into trust for that entire month starting from April the 1st. For every client, it shows you all that stuff, and in the end, it shows you the total that actually, came. Like, for example, Joseph Fernandez, it tells you that Joseph didn't pay for it. It was Dan Fernandez who actually paid for that, right? And $1,800 was brought in with the check number 678. And summing it up, that this month, the total amount of trust money received was 53695. Now, you can just look at your bank statement, and that should match. We expect that, other than the outstanding deposits, probably this was done on 29, so it may not show up till May the 1st. But other than that, you should see everything but for the $1,800. So, in a quick way, you actually found out that. Same thing with, general receipts, right? Like, if you had general receipts, you can, it's very simple. It'll just show you all the trust transfers that you did. Like, for example, in Joseph's case, the receipt that you received was that much, and it shows you that, and this is the total. Now let's look at payments. When you do payments, these are money that left trust. And in our case, for Joseph, it was the disbursement of $75 and the trust transfer that we did for the legal fee. So you see those two elements brought in. This immediately tells you the total money that left trust, right? Again, if this was done using a check, probably that was an outstanding check that may not be in the bank. So, you will clearly see that this will be $237.30 short of all your receipts on your bank statement. So looking at your bank statement, looking at our receipts, the accounting software, whatever the accounting software is, receipts should tell you the two together. Now going further, the last one is the general disbursements, right? And, you can do, again, I already showed this to you, but just doing a quick download of that. And here you go. This shows you everything with respect to what you've been doing for that month. That kind of gives you a view of all the expenses that you've been having this entire month. Going back, fee book. Why do you need to do fee book? The Law Society clearly says that, establishing, the way in which, recording the way in which you've been raising invoices is very important. So let me quickly do a fee book, and I'll do this download. And what are we capturing in the fee book is very important. If you look at the header of the fee book has date, client, description, fees, the taxes, and the total. I'm just going to look at the last one here, which is for Joseph Fernandez that we did. Joseph, the fee book clearly shows that the disbursement that was paid from general and the legal fee. It shows that. So that's what you need to actually capture in your fee book. Now, we believe that if the accounting software is fast and it's able to do all these things, you're better off doing this on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis rather than just wait for the 25th of the month to actually do this and, trying to find what is actually matching with what. Let's go through more compliance. The expense book. We do that and hit the download button to show you all the expenses that happen in that matter. So in this case, the application fee was the expense. The Minto rent that we put here was an expense. So that clearly says that's a corporate expense and this is a client expense. Last and final is I want to do reconciliation. Before I do reconciliation, I want to go back to my trust account because it's very important that I know how my trust account actually is and what's my balance. before I do reconciliation. Let's do a trust reconciliation. Trust reconciliation has a few parts. Now, we did a webinar last month explaining and detailing trust reconciliation in great detail. Now, it has several sections. If you open the Law Society bookkeeping guidelines, you'll see they talk about the first section, which is all about bank information, the second section that talks about outstanding checks, the third section that talks about outstanding deposits, and the last section, which is basically the client general listing, that is like the outstanding that is left in your bank, what is it split between among your last year client, and then a final statement stating that your bank, what you think you have is in the software that you're using is the same as what is there in the bank. So let me quickly do a reconciliation here. I'm just going to say like, hey, let's say this one check was outstanding, and similarly this one a check, was an outstanding deposit. So that means if I have, I would rather need a calculator here. I'm going to do that very quickly. So that's my outstanding money. So if I would put that into uLaw as my bank balance, I mean, this is a fake account, so I need to put whatever my calculator says. But in your case, you would actually be putting, what is really there. And, oh, I did the wrong thing. Sorry. 7, 6. Five, 7, that was outstanding. So minus 1725. Okay, so that's what I need to enter into uLaw as if that was my bank statement. So 75134.57. There you go. And if I hit the download button, you'll see our reconciliation statement. And once we have the reconciliation statement, it'll be very clear to you what I'm talking about. So that's our reconciliation statement. Part 1, what was there in the bank, your outstanding checks, your outstanding deposits, and the total of as per, after lessing and plussing, that's what, should have been in the bank, but it's not. Then the next part is basically a schedule that we prepared of the outstanding check. Obviously, we trivialized it for this experiment, for this webinar, just one check. Similarly, outstanding deposits, it's not going to be one check. And then that's part 2, part 3, and then the client listing activity. By far, this is what is going to take you the most amount of time, right? Like making sure that every client you've listed the last date of activity and the balance, add it all up, and you clearly say that this total is equivalent to that total. Okay, so now let's go back to our practice management. So we talked about client ledger, trust receipt journal, disbursement journal, and monthly reconciliation procedures. Let's talk a little bit about business management, what is essential, and what is actually good to have. Now, you saw the complexities of accounting and all that stuff. That's why Law Society recommends that you use a good software, an efficient use of a reputed legal software. Okay, there are quite a few softwares out there which vary in price, capability, feature set. The key aspects that you want to look at, in our view, on those softwares is, are they compliant to your Law Society requirements, and how efficient they make your practice, right? Like, if the software is only an invoicing software, that doesn't cover what you want. It has to be a proper trust managing software. It has to be a proper general accounting software. And obviously, it has to be an easy software to use. And it has to be mobile. These are all some of the elements that you can actually look into software. Now, security is very important, whether it's the software or whether it's your file management, making sure that you're having regular backups of your computer. These are some of the key business management aspects that the LSUC is recommending. Also, when you're using mobile devices, you have to ensure that you have robust security on them, because today your mobile devices are what they call the smartphones, go fairly beyond what most people think they have in those devices. Like you have a lot of information that you're capturing there, and you want to ensure that the robustness of those devices are actually there. The next one is an efficient business process is achieved when you have the ability to remotely access email and voice message. I'm going to take a quick pause here for a second, because we do want to announce one activity, which is like, if you're logged into your Join Me and you still have your name not established there, Praveen is taking a log of everybody that's logged in there. Please change that to your name. And we're getting pretty close to our webinar. We have another 25 minutes left. So at the end of the webinar, we strongly urge you to send us an email at info@ulawpractice.com indicating that you attended the whole webinar, so that when we submit our timesheet, we can indicate that you actually attended the webinar. So again, go to Join Me, change your name so that you indicate to us that you attended, and also send us an email at the end of the webinar indicating that you actually attended the webinar in full. Thank you. Now let's get to professional management. Okay. Now in professional management, these are some of the 4 guidelines that we picked from the Law Society's template. The first one is making sure that you complete your CPD hours much earlier than keeping it to the last moment. Do them. Make sure that you get your substantiative hours and your professional hours on time. They also ask you to review new legislation, case laws, attend several mock sessions that your professional associations might be organizing to understand more about that process. They recommend you to be a member of several of these professional organizations that exist, and we across the province partner with all these professional organizations in Ontario and other places. And some of these organizations even have good benefit partnership. If you're a member, you get good discounts with your insurance and all that stuff. So so it's a nice thing to be part of a professional association, and review your guidelines. That's a key aspect, making sure that you basically have completed your professional management requirements. Moving on to time management. So why is time management key to a legal practitioner? Is because they're juggling so many things on a daily basis. There are so many clients, so many activities. Unless you docket time properly and make sure that you have all your time managed, it's really, really hard to keep up and bill and make the revenue for the work that you actually made. So we strongly recommend that you maintain a good to-do list, manage your active files properly, and ensure that you also time docket your non-billable time too. It's very important that if you took time that was not billable, that's also docketed properly. For example, your pro bonos are docketed properly as well. Moving on to the next aspect, personnel management. It's pretty important that every year you take some time to actually reward yourself for the hard work that you put in. So satisfaction with the legal practice and enjoyment of your legal your practice of area is very important for your personal growth. Satisfaction with the growth of the company and your financial success is also very important. And tools play a key role in giving you the data so that you can make decisions. Okay, I think everybody deserves a good break, and people who put a lot of effort to manage a business which is so time consuming need to take time off to relieve their mental stress. Okay, and ensuring proper work balance is achieved and proper stress management. And this is exactly the reason why you should use as many tools as possible. It's not just about our software. There are so many other tools that exist that can efficiently narrow down the result you're looking for at a much faster time, thus allowing you to take a lot of your billable hours and converting them into more personal hours. Now, for the next 20 minutes, we're just going to talk a little bit into detail about benefits of practice management and what it can bring to you. Now, the most important thing that you want to look in a practice management solution is total cost of ownership. Now, if you're buying small tools and they add up to a lot of cost, then the total cost of ownership is very high. Cloud solutions kind of look at this from a very different perspective. Just to take in perspective, a good document management solution, right? Like a legacy document management solution generally is very expensive. You need to buy hard disk, you need to buy backup software, you need to buy, several of those, entities to even manage, all your, backup solution. Cloud solutions today provide you that in a very, very simple way. You just drag, drop. It's now available on your iPad, your mobile phone, and everywhere. Solutions like Google and Dropbox even allow you to edit them on the fly. They provide you audit status. They do a lot more at a very, very, very significantly less cost. So that's why looking at total cost of ownership is very important. Another benefit of using practice management is the efficiency that it brings into your practice, right? Doing everything yourself, in a manual way, is not, it doesn't bring efficiency to your practice. It doesn't save you a lot of time, and it can lead to a lot of frustration. So bringing in efficiency to your practice is another objective of practice management solutions. A key thing that you want to make sure is your compliance with your law society. Now, we want to talk here specifically to the LSUC guidelines because this CPD is for Ontario, and making sure that your software or any of your solution practices complies with LSUC has to be always in your mind. Lastly, the key element that has been brought out these days is practicing anywhere, because there are a lot of downtimes. You're traveling to a court, via subway, or you're actually going, in the court. You're waiting till your motion is there. Now, these are downtimes that can be actually translated to some form of, useful time if you have a practice management solution that works anywhere, right? So, now we've already touched these in detail, but just as a summary, matter management is very key. Organization and management of it, making sure that your phone and your meetings are documented properly. We talked quite a bit in detail about disbursement management. And then the matter status, keeping them up to date, whether they are closed or they're archived or active, is fairly important. Okay. We're going to skip some of the, the demos that we had. We had a demo on analytics, we're just going to show that in software rather than run a quick demo. Now, when you do all these work, some softwares can bring you analytics. Like, for example, you want to just look at your monthly fee. You can just say, I want my fee book for charge by the month, and just click on the analytics, and it'll bring out the data for you. Then you can do it as a bar chart or as a pie chart, and you can just say, oh, this month family and bills was really a great piece of my revenue, right? And small claims was second, real estate was next. It kind of quickly does that. Similarly, it's not just about revenue. You also want to keep an eye on your expense. So you can say, hey, where's all my expense by clients, right? What in this month. And as soon as you do that, all your clients come out, right? All your expenses, including your business expense, and then quickly showing that as the business expense was so high this month compared to any other expenses. It clearly highlights to you, where you should be paying your attention. Another key element is unbilled hours. It's like, for example, work in progress. I want to see for this month, do I have any dockets that are unbilled? Here you go. A lot of these matters have 23 days that I have not even billed them, like, showing them as, in a pie chart or a bar chart can be very helpful. Similarly, we also have a concept called insights. Now, what is insights? Insights are basically a question that you've not even thought about. Like, for example, you want to analyze this year on your expenses. The software can analyze your entire year and tell you, like, hey, this is what we saw for this period of time. That the highest expense was rent, so you have to pay some attention to it. So you would have not even thought about it that way, and the software can tell you, like, certain things. Like, for example, after rent, the second highest was expense on clients, which is a good thing because this is recoverable economy. Miscellaneous expenses were pretty high too, right? So this is analytics and insights. This is basically coming down to questions that you either never thought about or you are not even aware of in your business and trying to showcase that to you, right? Another key analytics is, like, for example, invoice balance. Who are the people who never paid me? Like, for example, you can say, an invoice balance and do a download, or I would have done an invoice insight, and what that would have told me is everybody who basically has not paid me for the invoice I have generated. Look at this, like, Fred Journal, I raised an invoice on 15th of March, and, he hasn't paid. And actually, it's my mistake. I didn't do a $100 trust transfer. Even though the invoice was $678, I didn't do a $100 trust transfer. So if I look at the bottom, I raised $24,000 of invoice, and $12,000 is just sitting in trust that I haven't even done a trust transfer. So, trying to bring business analytics along with the software is very helpful, and it kind of adds to your value right away. That's why matter analytics is very important. What it does is it measures your health of your business. Like, as a sole practitioner, you need to understand your past success and failure to improve the business process. And more about analytics is like answering the questions that really matter to you. Calendar management, we see, is very important. Synchronizing your personal calendar with like, say, your calendar that you're maintaining in Outlook or Gmail with your client calendar, getting a daily view, a monthly view. Calendar always pays for itself, in any form of practice. Now, forms automation is something very special that we do. There are very few softwares that actually integrate both forms and business practice and accounting into a single software. We do that, and it's so easy in uLaw to actually do the form. Like, for example, if I'm just going to use an example of accident benefits here. Let's say, even though it's family matter, let me just use this as an example. I'll just say add party. Let's say this is Alex Rabbit, Bunny Rabbit, is actually a substitute decision maker because Joe cannot make that decision. You can just add him as a party. And let's say this one is the insurance company or the insurance adjuster, whatever you want to call. And I'm going to add, let's say Richard Brown is the physician, right? Like, let's say he is the health practitioner. Now, these additional parties are going to vary based on what kind of matter it is. I chose SABs, so that's why, I'm putting these ones. I can just choose, let's say, I'm going to choose a treatment and assessment plan. And when you do a download, the software recognizes what is what. So it says, oh, that's Joseph's address, phone number. The insurance company's details are here. The practitioner, like, you can say, oh, he was a chiropractor. You could just say that. And it tells you who's the practitioner. And in the end, it immediately puts the substitute decision maker because Joseph cannot make his own decision. So it tries to fill in most of the parts of the form, as you saw, like, trying to save you time. That's one key aspect that we have in our software. It's a big time saver when it comes to small claims, landlord and tenant, POA, family law, and accident benefits. So we do those for Ontario, so it can be a huge benefit to your practice. And I'm going to skip this demo because I already showed you one. We talked about trust accounting. A very key notion that we want to talk about is seamless trust, because we clearly said, the more you work on the matter, if accounting can automatically happen in the back, you've kind of gained huge benefits on it. A very powerful analytical and reporting tool, because that's what you're paying your accountant at the end of the day to actually report for, tell you how your last month has been. If it can also help you in your taxation purposes to file your HST, that's a very key benefit, and making sure that your compliance, as I showcased is very easily met. We talked about all the key records that the Law Society is looking for: the letters, the journals, the fee books, and the reconciliation statements. We talked about all of them, and our software, obviously, we call it like no accounting software, and that kind of brings us to the end of this webinar. We have about 10 minutes, and I'm going to ask Praveen, who's been patiently collecting questions, to go ahead and ask me the questions, and I can answer.
Yeah, thanks, James. So kindly do use the chat line for any questions that you want to ask us during the next 10 minutes. I think there's a question about security. I think it was highlighted, and cloud. I think they want to talk about the cloud security. I can maybe take that question real quick. Cloud security, regardless of what software you're using today, has really matured, and is only continuing to mature. A lot of the software that we find legal professionals use in the marketplace, again, you would have to do your due diligence, but I believe most of the software companies, including uLaw, provide bandwidth security for the cloud storage. We do store our data from a security perspective here within Canada. That makes the whole compliance with the data security being local and national compliant. So you probably want to do a quick due diligence before you choose a software that you want to use based on their compliance to both data security as well as encryption. We use a 256-bit encryption for our product. So yeah, you would have to probably do your due diligence before you choose a product for its security. But by and large, the software that are out there from a cloud perspective for legal practitioners allow you to be safe and secure. Password would also be another important aspect to using your software. We highly recommend that you use a password that is, I guess, personal, but at the same time not something that's easily repeatable. We force the use of alphabets, special characters, and numbers in the software, and I'm sure there's other softwares who do similar things. Question about document management. Probably would have Dams go back to our demo. The way documents are managed specifically in uLaw, if the question is more specific to uLaw, I can take it. We integrate with Google Drive, which is a cloud storage, Google being one of the leading cloud storage providers. We also chose Google Drive because they provide 15 gig of free space compared to all other cloud storage providers. They are the ones who provide close to 15 gig of free space if you do have a Gmail account associated with it. And we seamlessly integrate with Google Drive. We allow you to create your matter within uLaw and associate documents that you generate and drag and drop that into Google Drive's folder so it's made available to you on the cloud at any time.
So with this specific example, Praveen, I think the JF matter, I think as I was doing the presentation, you uploaded quite a few documents into Google Drive. the client statements and all the ones that I was downloading, you were uploading it. And what uLaw did was he brought out all those documents here. So as you see here, this is my Google Drive. And as I was doing the presentation, Praveen was uploading all the, the conflict checks and all that. I can actually now open it right in Google. And here you go. It's all here, the house closing matter that we just raised. He was uploading it, and it's right here as well. So even if I click here, it's going to open the same document. So we kind of have, rather than us developing the solution, we have integrated with Google, and you basically go back to Google and manage your documents. So under uLaw Practice Matter, you have your files, and this is your file, and it tells you, your Matter files. All Praveen did was just drag and drop them, and we brought it into uLaw.
So we've integrated to an extent where you can actually make changes within Google Drive, and that gets reflected here as well. So, for example, if you're not in uLaw, and I don't want this to be a uLaw webinar, but just as a closure note, if you open up Google Drive, click on a document, and change the description, maybe add a quick note, retainer, letter, and then if you were to save it within Google Drive, when you come back to uLaw and refresh your documents, that gets reflected as well. That way, we've kind of seamlessly integrated in real time with Google Drive, and we're also going to be integrating with Dropbox and other storage moving forward. There's a question, I think this is a bit more personal to you. When will this application be available as an application for iOS?
We are working very closely with Apple on that. We already got certified by Android. That was an easy process. Apple believes that our app is not Apple enough, so we are working very closely with Apple. We hope to have Apple released hopefully either end of next month or even earlier than that. It takes about from the time they approve our app. We've been working with Apple very closely. It's been almost a 3-month process now, where we've been working with them, and they are asking us to modify certain aspects of our software to blend more with their flavor of UI. So that's what is taking us a little bit of time. We are expecting a release in another 15 days, barring more issues with Apple, but we believe we're pretty close.
I think there's a question from one of our clients. How do you connect uLaw with your Google Drive account? Maybe we'll take this offline, and we'll get back to you with the instructions and the video as to how we do it.
Yeah.
It's a more recent feature, so I'm sure you're going to be excited about that. There's another question about how much is uLaw. We're priced at $29 Canadian yearly for an annual payment, so it's $348 plus tax. Or if you were to go month on month, it's priced at $39 a month. I can see them bringing up the price. Yes, there you go. The annual subscription is $348 per year. And if you're a student, for the first year, we offer it to you at $25 a month.
There is a small price change that we're going to be bringing in on Canada Day. Not applicable to any client who's already our client before Canada Day, because of bringing in so many new features, especially 2 new features, which is the document management and our payment feature. Because now you can collect payment within uLaw right here. You can collect payment. We are increasing it not by much, just $5. We're just increasing it because to meet our cost structure.
Okay, so just to be clear, right now, between now and July 1st, if you register and sign up for uLaw, it's $29 and $39 accordingly. Anyone who registers after July 1st, our price is...
Yeah, and no price increase for our existing clients. Okay. I want to be very clear that none of our clients are going to see any price increase. What they registered for at that time is what it is.
I think we have 2 more minutes if there are any more questions. You can see a few typing away.
Again, as a housekeeping, please send your email. Please send us a very small email, info@ulawpractice.com. the indication that you actually attended the webinar for our this. Just give your first name and your contact information. That's more than enough for us. We will be submitting our thing back to the LSUC in 15 days from now.
Another question is about our Android app. So yes, you can download the uLaw app on the Android Play Store. And if you do have both for your trial account, I think the question was about the trial account. So yes, it really does not matter whether you use a paid account or trial account. The software features remain to be the same.
I'm just showing you some of the screens in our how you manage contacts. This is your uLaw Insights is available on our Android app right there. You can actually, your downtime, let's say you're in a subway, you can be doing insights and understanding. That's our matter. It shows you all your invoice status and, all very useful information.
There's another question about the iPhone. I think we just spoke a little bit about that. We're still waiting for Apple to confirm the changes that we made to the app. We've already published it to them. Unfortunately, we're not able to give a timeline because we're almost waiting for Apple to get back to us. But I would think
we're hoping it's under 30 days.
So within 30 days, we hope to have that in the iOS store. Okay. If there aren't any further, okay. How do I connect uLaw to a bank account?
Okay. You cannot connect uLaw to a bank account, but you can definitely import your bank statement into uLaw. Very, very easy. I'm going to just show you a very simple example here. If you just go to Administrator and say import your bank statement, and let's say, I have my CIBC statement here, here you go, my CIBC credit card. I can just say double click on it, and I can say, hey, I'm importing it, and do an upload. The software has the capability to look at your bank statement and say, oh yeah, I understand. Oh, that's a Walmart. That's already imported. City of Ottawa. That's already imported. And it's pretty smart, with respect to what it is. For example, that's a gas expense. You can just say, hey, that's an office expense. The software immediately says, hey, that's a gas expense. That's your HST. You can just say paid to Mr. Gas and hit the submit button. And then you will see that action is complete. So we don't directly interface with your bank, but if you download your bank statement, you can bring it into uLaw for managing your general accounting in a very, very menu-driven way. This is basically your bank statement, and it's just basically, for example, Hilton Garden, and you can just say, office expense. It'll immediately know, oh, Hilton is a hotel, so it'll choose hotel, and and you can immediately just say Hilton, and this was on February the 29th, and hit the submit button.
So Dams, I probably will stop.
You have to stop because
stop the presentation right now. There's one last question. We spoke about compliance, but did not see a Form 9A or other forms being filled out.
It was just purely because of lack of time, but if I'm just going to quickly show Form 9A. If you just click here, there you go. Form 9A is right here. Good question. You can just fill in your bank account details, RBC General, and and fill in your other number, and that's your trust, and download. It's as simple as that. Form 9A in uLaw is, there you go, Form 9A. Everything is filled out. Whatever we haven't filled, you can fill it too. So thanks for that question. I did rush through that section because we had so much to cover in an hour and a half.
It is 4:30, or is it actually 4:33? So I would thank you for your time. Please do send us your email confirming your presence. We sincerely appreciate it and thank you for participating. We wish you a great weekend, and we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar. Thank you.